The Department of Justice submitted a midnight court filing in response to former President Donald Trump's request for a special master to independently review the documents taken by the FBI from Mar-a-Lago. Most notably, included in that court filing were the department's clearest assertions yet as to why they made the unprecedented move of searching the resort hotel and home of the former president in the first place. Back in June, Trump's legal team said in a signed statement that it fulfilled the order of the grand jury subpoena ordering him to return all of the classified documents improperly taken from the White House. The Justice Department says that isn't true. And just take a look at this picture released by the Department of Justice in their court filing. In it, you see some of the 100 documents with classification markings in bright red and in capital letters. Some of them are even labeled top secret, just like in the movies. Documents you see here in this photo are just some of the documents that the FBI found during its search earlier this month. Documents that Trump was not allowed to have in his possession. And that's twice the number of documents Trump's lawyers voluntarily turned over after signing a letter in June saying that they had already returned everything. On top of that, the DOJ says it found evidence that in the months leading up to its unprecedented search, government records were likely, quote, concealed and removed from the storage room in which Trump claimed to be keeping the records in an effort to, quote, obstruct the government's investigation. In short, the DOJ says that not only did Donald Trump improperly and perhaps illegally take these records, he lied about returning all of them to the government, and then he attempted to hide them once the government began its inquiry to try to get everything back. Joining me now to help break this all down, although I think that was a pretty good encapsulation of what's going on here, former Watergate prosecutor Nick Ackerman and also MSNBC legal analyst, and I should note, criminal defense lawyer Danny Cevallos. And I think that this is a nice balance as we talk through this. Nick, I'll start with you. What are your top takeaways from the 36-page DOJ filing?
Well, there's a number of them. On a general level, they basically have eviscerated any of Trump's defenses that he's raised in the course of this motion. They point out that when he basically turned over those documents early on in January of 2022, that he raised issues of executive privilege in a letter or basically objected to certain things being given to the government. But the bottom line is he never went to court over it. He never contested it. So in effect, he kind of waived any kind of executive privilege such as there was, although they argue pretty strenuously there was no executive privilege here. These documents all belong to the government, and that the executive privilege belongs to the current executive, not Donald Trump. The second thing they do is essentially point out that on the two occasions where he did produce documents, that was back in January of 2022, and then in response to the subpoena in June of 2022, he never said anything about these documents being declassified or that he did anything to declassify them. Not that it really makes a difference, but it really puts the lie to him and to his defense that this was part of it. The bottom line is the government makes a very strong case that there is no need for a special master at this point. All of the documents have already been reviewed. They've set aside those documents through their filter team that basically comes up with a small number of documents that might arguably be attorney-client privilege. But keep in mind, there has not been an affidavit or declaration submitted by Donald Trump saying that any of these documents were attorney-client privilege or even providing a reason why executive privilege would apply to him, even though he doesn't have the privilege. In addition, they make it pretty clear that under traditional standard of a preliminary injunction, he waited too long. Courts only grant injunctions, preliminary injunctions, when there's an emergency. When you wait 2 weeks, it undercuts the whole idea that there was an emergency.
In terms of the defenses, Danny, I mean, as Nick explained, he thinks that this obliterates Trump's potential defenses. What do you think about that? I mean, think through potentially that we never see any of this stuff, because, again, the only reason we're seeing any of this, including the photo, is because Donald Trump has started this legal process that got us to this point. I mean, he could have just kept his mouth shut after the search of Mar-a-Lago, and then we would have never seen this photograph in the Washington Post today. But we have. What do you think about the idea that the defenses are obliterated by the contents of this filing?
Don't expect much more in the way of documents that we'll see other than covers that are labeled top secret. We're not going to see a whole lot more than that. The government's going to make sure that we don't, or at least try to avoid that. But when you step back, what Trump's team is arguing for is a special master, something that probably wouldn't help them that much anyway. And at first I thought, well, why is the government even really opposing this? And more than that, why are they asking for more than the required 20 pages, the 20-page limitation on filings in federal court? Why are they asking for additional pages? Well, I found out. They want to really drive home the facts and set them straight, that Trump was recalcitrant, resisted turning these over, that the government gave him many opportunities, and he didn't do it. And what this brief drives home is the history of those shenanigans, which, by the way, Trump brought upon himself by fighting for this special master, which, again, isn't going to help him all that much anyway. And one more thing that folks aren't really talking about is the standing argument by the government. Standing is a constitutional jurisdictional thing. It's not sexy. It's not an exciting argument. But you may remember from law school, they tell you in any essay question, discuss standing because it's always in play. If there is no standing, that means Trump, as a former president, doesn't have any say in these documents because he's not the president anymore. And that gives a judge an easy out. The judge can say, whoa, I may be a Republican rising star. I may have my eyes set on the Court of Appeals, but I can avoid any of the thorny, sticky, uncomfortable issues by just saying, oh, I don't have jurisdiction. Here's a 2-page opinion. I'm out of here.
It's such an important explanation, Danny. And again, like, if you were my law professor, I probably would have understood standing a whole lot better. Just saying. Nick, I want to read you a tweet from NBC News correspondent Tom Winter, and it says, the Justice Department asserts that some of the documents seized from Mar-a-Lago are so sensitive and classified that in some instances the FBI agents and DOJ attorneys needed additional security clearances to view them. So give us an idea of the importance of that detail here. I mean, as Danny said, we're not going to see what's under these sheets with the yellow and the red. I mean, I think, like, if the document that I was taking home, like, looked like that on the top, I would be like, you know, maybe I'm going to leave this on the desk. But Nick, help us understand the importance of the fact that the information that is under these cover sheets is so top secret that no one can even read it in some instances other than the people on a special list or the person that created the document in the first place.
No, I think what we're dealing with here are extremely sensitive documents that reveal potential sources in foreign countries that are providing information to the CIA, under basically spies that we don't want revealed, that take years and years to develop, and other kinds of information like that that really show what we're doing across the globe. I think that this stuff is super secretive, and there are levels of clearances. I've at one point had the highest, and I've had other clearances, but to go through this, it is a very laborious process of filling out lots of forms about anything you've ever done in your life so that the FBI can do a thorough background check. And the idea that the agents who are actually reviewing these documents didn't have security clearances high enough to review some of these documents is quite stunning. Now, keep in mind, there is another little time bomb that's sitting in here that the government has basically set up Donald Trump to grab, and that is Trump has asked for a better kind of recitation of the documents that were taken. And the government has told the judge that they have done so. They've given it to her under seal, and that they're willing to provide that to Donald Trump. Well, my guess is Trump is probably going to take the bait. He's probably going to ask for it. It's probably thereafter going to be made public because of that. And it's probably going to make him look a lot worse because it's going to show you more of the detail in terms of the timing and the dates and the breadth of the material that's involved.
I mean, this is a really scary situation just because of the potential damage that could have been done to our national security, and the DNI is going to be looking into that. But I can't help but notice that all of the shenanigans, as we've called them, that the Trump side is playing here in court is delaying the ability of our government to do a full accounting of the damage that has been done to our national security. And so it's like damage to our national security that's continuing because of these delays, potentially. Nick Ackerman and Danny Cevallos, great to have you here. Thank you both. Please stay safe. President Biden, who served over 30 years in the Senate, rarely criticizes specific members of Congress in public. But on Tuesday, the president did just that in calling out South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
The idea you turn on the television and see senior senators and congressmen saying, if such and such happens, there'll be blood in the street. Where the hell are we?
Where the hell are we? The president asked. I ask that at least once a day. It's an important question. And while Biden didn't name Graham, it's obvious who he meant, given the senior U.S. senator said this on Fox News this weekend.
If they try to prosecute President Trump for mishandling classified information after Hillary Clinton set up a server in her basement, they literally will be riots in the street. I worry about our country.
Now, just put aside for a minute Graham's totally false comparison between then Hillary Clinton, who was the Secretary of State at the time, using a private email server. Again, she was actually in government when she was doing all of this, and Colin Powell did it too. But that's not the point. The point is that the president is the former president. So former President Donald Trump taking top secret documents after we all voted him out of office as American voters, and then allegedly concealing them from the FBI. I want everybody to focus instead for a minute on Graham's warning. He said if Donald Trump is prosecuted for breaking the law and potentially putting U.S. security at risk, there will be, quote, riots in the streets. The real danger here is actually not theoretical. It's not hypothetical or potentially in the future. We already had a deadly riot at the U.S. Capitol last year, where some Trump supporters literally hunted members of Congress, also the vice president, who happened to be in the same party as Lindsey Graham. And national security officials warn that political violence and domestic terrorism in the United States continue to be a very real and present danger. Joining us are Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist and contributor to USA Today and the Los Angeles Times, and also Rick Tyler, Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst. So, Kurt, Lindsey Graham has now tried to walk back his comments by saying that he was not condoning violence, but do you find that credible? I noticed that he didn't condemn the violence even in the statement itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is typical Republican MO at this point. They say the crazy thing. They say the quiet part out loud, and then they try to pretend like their words have no impact, like their words have no meaning, like their words cannot be interpreted a certain way. After January 6th, the jig is up on the idea that their words are harmless or meaningless, that the Republican base, the MAGA Republicans, will not take their words as gospel and, in fact, treat their words as instructions. That's what they did on January 6th. Trump acolytes stormed the Capitol in a violent effort to overthrow our government and throw out a free and fair election. That's something that we've seen the playbook of autocrats over and over before. That's something that we see from fascism over and over before throughout human history. That's what we're seeing from the Republican playbook right now. And for Lindsey Graham, a senator who should know better, who spent so much of his career trying to get the credibility of being John McCain's so-called best friend, he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what his words means. He knows exactly the environment that we're in. For him to try to walk that back now is just laughable.
Yeah, like, Rick, why would Lindsey Graham say this right now? He's seen what happened on January 6th. I mean, Josh Hawley saw he was scurrying out, running out, you know what I mean, after doing the fist. Everybody had to run for their lives. Why would Lindsey Graham say this given the context of this particular moment in American history?
Well, I don't think he's altogether wrong. I don't think he's altogether wrong that there might be violence. I think that's a concern many people have for the reasons you just cited that we saw on January 6th, that supporters of Donald Trump did riot and they did resort to violence, extreme violence in the Capitol. For over 200 years, we have had an unblemished record of succession of power in a peaceful way, and Donald Trump blew that by fomenting a riot and an insurrection. So there may be. Now, whether Lindsey Graham was trying to foment that or not, only he can say. But I would have liked to have seen him condemn the violence on January 6th in the same breath he's saying that there might be violence in the future and that there shouldn't be. So he needs to be clear about his apology, his walk back, and his explanation.
I don't know if you guys can hear my phone. It's actually on silent. So I don't know how it rang just now. I'm really scared, actually, about that. That is not the point of this conversation. Kurt, one of the things that I thought about today was Congresswoman Maxine Waters, because she is frequently criticized by Republicans, most recently as last year, when she, gets feisty and fired up. And during the Derek Chauvin trial, we should mention he was convicted for murdering a black man, George Floyd. We all know that. And she said that if Chauvin wasn't convicted, people would need to, quote, get more confrontational in the fight for justice. She didn't call for riots, although Republicans suggested at the time that she did, and they, did laps and laps criticizing the black woman. Kurt, do you think it's fair to compare what she said to what Lindsey Graham said? And walk us through some of the distinctions you see, if you see any.
Well, it's always this ridiculous game of both sidesism, as false comparisons. You even alluded to a little bit of that with the comments about Hillary Clinton's email server and former President Donald Trump's effort to try to steal classified information and keep it from the FBI. These things are not on the same playing field, and there's a very big difference in what Congresswoman Maxine Waters was saying and talking about, and where we're at with what people like Lindsey Graham are talking about. Again, it's not theoretical. We have seen the Trump MAGA acolytes storm the United States Capitol. It wasn't Democrats. It wasn't Antifa. It wasn't the woke left, whatever the hell that even means. It was the MAGA Republican base that did that. This isn't theoretical. We're not making this up. It actually happened. Thanks to the work of the January 6th Select Committee, we've seen the footage. We know intimately, minute by minute, what was going on and how dangerous and how to the brink we came of a complete and unthinkable tragedy. That's what happened on the Republican side. So for them to try to invoke this idea that anyone in the Democratic Party has said anything close to what we have seen from the Republicans, and that any actions that have happened by the American people of violence were somehow inspired by the Democratic Party, that does not happen on our watch.
Yeah, Rick, what's stopping Republicans what's stopping them from condemning this type of rhetoric coming from Lindsey Graham and other Republicans, even in the media? I mean, I feel like anytime Maxine Waters says something, they make her go sit in the corner and be quiet. They're like, please stop. There's always, even from the Democratic side, even tacit, mild condemnation, let's say, of the rhetoric and reminding people, no, we're not for violence. That's not what Maxine Waters meant. But Republicans never feel the need to do that. Why is it? Why is that?
Well, Zerlina, I don't know. I don't do binaries, so it seems like it's all one thing or all the other, and that's not an exclusive feature of the Republican Party, which I'll readily admit that they do. But the Democrats do such things also. We don't get the whole story. Look, life is not like that. Life is nuanced. Life is somewhere in the middle. Can we compare the Hillary case to the Trump case? In many ways, we can't. In some ways, there is concern, though. Whenever you have the FBI investigate a high-level official, whether it was Secretary Clinton or whether it was former President Donald Trump, and I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, and I'm not condemning Hillary Clinton. I think in the end, the decision about Clinton was probably ultimately right, although Comey should not have been the one who made it. The DOJ, that was their job to make it, and why they didn't make that clear, I don't know. But every American should be concerned when the FBI does not treat politicians, regardless of their party, equally. That's a huge concern. I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying, but people have concerns. Donald Trump seems to, from all the evidence we've seen so far, and it will be adjudicated in court, that he was willfully taking documents. The fact that the DOJ now has Donald Trump's 2 of his passports because they intermingled those classified documents with his personal effects tells you that he was part of the obstruction. So I do think there's a serious case here to be made, but everybody should be concerned that we use the powers of government to inflict damage on the opposite political party. It may be deserved, but it deserves scrutiny.
Well, I think the DOJ has taken their time for that reason. I would say that Glenn Kirshner said yesterday that nobody can argue that they're rushing it. No one will make that argument at the end of the day, that they rushed to judgment. Kurt Bardella and Rick Tyler, thank you so much for being here today. Please stay safe. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.